Hi everyone, I'm just out on a walk and I thought I would do a little walk and talk because wow guys, I am just blown away by what we've been experiencing. Um, the things I'm learning like day by day, the way my mind is changing, it's just incredible. So in all of my 3 years of watching intensively for the rapture, I have never experienced something like this where you have back to back incredibly high watch dates in a short span of time. So of course September 23 and 24, I was sure that was going to be the catching away from the earth. Then October 6 through 7, I was certain that was it. I didn't actually become certain again until October 30 and 31, but I was sure that was going to be it. There were so many good reasons for each of these watch dates. Such a convergence of evidence that said this is the day. And so of course I watch, I expect. And if I'm wrong, I look again. That's the only way to look for anything. But like Gigi said, we're going to be wrong until we're gone. I like that. But we're not just totally wrong, of course. I just put out a video yesterday where I basically took a victory lap because of what the Bible says regarding the pattern of the coming of the Lord and how we're in that pattern. And it began on September 23 and 24. The rapture began. Jesus came down to rapture his church, just like Joshua said. Here we are. So anyway, what I want to do today is show you why just recently, basically last night, I became completely convinced that November 7 through 8, basically Heshvan 17 on the standard civil Hebrew calendar, is the day we leave the earth for heaven. So basically what got me convinced was some very personal reasons, and these are really awesome to me. I'm going to basically share a testimony with you in this. The structure of a testimony is kind of the skeletal structure of the testimony because there's so many details that make it so much more powerful. And what I think I'll do is just share that structure here, and it's going to be a little bit strange, not the usual way you would share this, but I'm going to share this here, and then I'm going to go into a post and I'm going to share that there. So check out the post whenever I get that done, either today or tomorrow, but we're going to start here. And I told you this is going to be strange. Here's how strange it is. I'm going to start my testimony with the day of my conception, okay? That was a long time ago. And basically we don't know exactly what day, but the best we know is that my mother told me recently that she remembers that I was born at 38 weeks pregnant to the day. So exactly 38 weeks after conception, essentially. Of course, it's not exactly that, but I was born. So if you count 38 weeks back from my birthday, it brings you to April 12th. And that's interesting because then my baptism, my first baptism, I was actually baptized twice, but my first main baptism was on April 11th when I was 10 years old. Now, that's pretty close, right? April 11, April 12. And of course, baptism is a symbol of the new birth, the second birth, right? I live in the land of fire and ice, way up north, and I'll let you figure out where that is. But I want to tell you a little bit of how I got here. I met my wife in the U.S. where I lived at the time, and she was from this country where I now live. I had never met someone from here, and when she met me, she was kind of struck by my Google profile image. And that's because the Google profile image I had at the time, representing me on Google and YouTube, and it's still the one I have today. I've never changed it since I originally posted it. It was a picture of a church in a little town in this country where I now live called Vik I Myrdal. And this church is very iconic. Lots of pictures of it you can find online. The town is super beautiful. It's nestled in a little cove between mountains and the sea on the south coast of our country. And basically, I had posted this picture back in 2012, years before I met my wife, at a time when I just wanted to represent myself with a beautiful image that represented Christianity, a church, right? And I didn't even know at the time where the church was, or if it was a real church, or I didn't know anything. But when I met my wife, she was amazed because she thought I had immediately changed my profile image to a picture from her country because I was so into her all of a sudden, and she thought I was very fast. It was very fast to me, but that was not at all the case, and I didn't even find out she thought this about me until a month later, when she told me that this church is from her country. In fact, it's a very famous church in her country, very iconic, and she told me what she thought, and I was very fast to just immediately change my profile image just because I met her, which was not at all the case. It had been my profile image for years. So we get to the country where we now live. The way we moved here was I married her, and just shortly after marrying her, on April 11 and 12, we flew here. That was my first time coming to this country, and we brought all of our belongings. We moved permanently here. I had never been here before. I moved here permanently. I knew God was sending me here. And but we flew from the U.S. on April 11, and we landed here on April 12. It was an overnight flight. And then that summer, the following summer, I went to visit for the first time the church in Vik i Myrdal, and it's called Vikerkirkja. And so that was an amazing trip. It was just so surreal to be at the church in my Google profile image for the first time, knowing the story of how I had posted it, not knowing that I would then later, years later, marry a girl from the country where that church was, and then end up moving to that country and visiting that church. So I was a permanent resident of that country when I first visited the church. So that day, when I got back home, I looked up, when did I post that Google profile image? And turned out that I had posted it on April 12th of 2012, exactly to the day, 4 years before I landed in Iceland with all my belongings, before I landed in this country with all my belongings, moving here with my wife from here. So, wow. It was just a spine-tingling moment to realize. Now, at that time, I did not know that I was also conceived, essentially, to the best of our knowledge, on that same date, April 12th, and that I was baptized, essentially, around the time of that same. So, conceived April 12th, baptized April 11, and then left the U.S. April 11, and landed in the country I now live on April 12th. Insane. Clearly, God was leading, and basically what I've come to look back on this as is my rapture. My rapture to this country. This country's been amazing to live in. I've done very well here. And it was such a good place to be for the COVID crisis. So much better than the U.S. to be here rather than there for COVID. And it's really been my little heaven to go to heaven in. And I was raptured by the national airline to this country on April 11 and 12. So I see those days as pointing to the rapture. Now, some years passed, and I came to realize, actually within the last 3 years, I came to realize that there's a lot of context to that image. The church, the Vikerkirkja church, is actually the only place in Vik that would survive a glacial flood if the local volcano erupted. We live in the land of fire and ice because we have all kinds of volcanoes here in amongst the glaciers, and the volcanoes erupt and cause glacial floods. Well, Vik, the city of Vik, is in great danger from a glacial flood, and it turns out that the Vik church up on a hill in the city is known to be the only place that would survive such a flood. There's not much known about this church, really. That's actually the most famous fact about it. that it would survive a glacial flood. And they even hold emergency evacuation drills where everybody has to run up to the church to as fast as they can from everywhere in the town to avoid a sudden glacial flood should the volcano erupt. So yeah, a church on a mountaintop as a refuge from the flood. That's the story of my Google profile image. And that's what the rapture is about. Going to Mount Zion, which is essentially a church, which is a mountain. It's also a mountain. You can think of it as a church on a mountain or a church which is a mountain. We're going to go there to escape the flood of destruction, which is the tribulation, right? And that's why April 11 and 12 has everything to do with my birth, my new birth, and my rapture to this wonderful country. So, anyway, let's skip forward a little bit now. I want to tell you something else. On August 26th of 2023, I received the one and only waking vision God has ever given me. And I was in my bed, but I was completely awake, and all of a sudden, I see before me nothing but a big, huge, vibrating with energy 69. It says 69, and it's huge. It just takes up my whole field of vision, basically. It's vibrating. It's almost like it's alive. Very emphasized. 69. And then I look away somehow, and I look right back at it. It's the only thing I can see anywhere. The rest of my vision is completely blanked out somehow. And I look away, I look back, and now it's not a 69, it's a 36, and it's less emphasized, more static, not vibrating. It's just not as emphasized. So anyway, that was the vision. August 26, 2023. I've never had anything like that before or after happen. I've had dreams from God that I know were supernatural dreams, but this was not a dream, it was a waking vision. So it's really stood out to me as very important. And I would love to share much, much more about what I've learned regarding the significance of this. And I'm going to do that in the upcoming post, hopefully. But what I want to say now is that on November 3 of 2024, so almost exactly a year ago, God gave me a dream where he essentially explained that vision in a big way to me. And the dream was about escaping a flood to a office complex mansion on a hilltop where we would be safe. And I'm not going to go into all the details of that dream, but that was the essence of the dream. We were escaping a flood, trying to escape this flood, and our destination was this mansion office complex on a hilltop. And it turns out that there was a major connection in that dream to the numbers 69 and 36. And in studying that out, I came to realize for the first time that, there's only one chapter, 69, in all of Scripture. That would be Psalm 69. And that chapter just happens to have 36 verses. So, boom. That's what that vision was about, or at least one thing it was about. Psalm 69:36. Well, not just Psalm 69:36, but the whole chapter, which has 36 verses. And it turns out that a major feature of this chapter is being delivered from a flood. And that flood represents the wicked that would be trying to destroy the righteous. And so you'll have to go read that chapter and see. And ultimately it ends with talk about how Mount Zion is the destination. So this is the chapter that is sort of undergirding all of this supernatural experience with April 4, the Google image, the vision. And it's about escaping a flood to Mount Zion. It has everything to do with the rapture. And it turns out that this year, back on my anniversary, September 4, and I made a video about this, I found myself escaping a flood in my house with my wife. You can go watch that video. I'll put a link to it in the description box. But, you know, on my anniversary, which of course was my wedding day, and, you know, that's a symbol of the rapture. So escaping a flood on my anniversary, or on the day of the rapture, right? And yeah, so what is everybody looking at now? Of course, they're looking at the 7th of November, which happens to be Heshvan 17, the 17th day of the second month. And we have in Genesis 7:11, sort of like the 7th day of the 11th month. That's the verse where it says that on the 17th day of the second month, all the floodgates were opened and the flood happened. It's also interesting to note that Hebrews 11 verse 7, like November 7, is, you know, this is the faith chapter, and in that verse it talks about Noah building an ark to the saving of his house and so forth. Unbelievable convergence here. So, I mean, what are the chances of all this? You know, what are the chances? So, my most important vision, this incredible date, April 11th through 12th, of, you know, the Google profile image and how I was raptured to this country I now live in. I mean, guys, what are the chances? I'm so excited. How could I not be excited? And I'm only telling you the skeletal structure here. This is kind of a long video. It's getting a bit long, but I just had to come out here and talk to you about this. I mean, I had to do it today because we don't have much more time, and I don't know, I have kind of a busy schedule. I've got some people I'm hosting and stuff I'm doing. Got little kids, of course, and I don't know how much more I'm gonna get to post or make videos. I just wanted to share this because it's very significant to me, and it causes me to be very excited to escape the flood on the day of the flood, which begins the 7th of November, just 2 days from now. So look up, guys. We are going home so incredibly soon. Can't wait to see you in the clouds. And I will potentially make another video. Maybe this is my last one. Who knows? We'll see. God bless.